On this video, we're going to do a floor pan install on the 71 CUDA. We're going to take all that junk on the floor, cut it out, and I'm going to show you how to turn it into this. So I have the right rear frame rail removed. You can see I have the front leaf spring mounts, the shock mounts, and I have other points that are going to be reference jig points welded on that this frame rail, when it goes in, it should just go in as a puzzle piece basically. If you look in the rear, I cut the floor, we're going to drop it down. Right there you can see the rear mount goes off the shackle bracket. That's going to be rigged up in there. I'm putting in the frame rail now. It's set in pretty good. This is an AMD metal. You can see I had to use some straps to force it into place a little bit, but it only took about 1/8 of an inch of pull in, push in. The jig here is the key, so you have something solid where the car's not moving. And I'm just tacking it to the jig points before I actually put it in the car. So here's a walk around. The front's welded in. You can see the spots that penetrate through on the jig points. It's welded into the shock tower. That's really the only reference point on the car right now is the shock tower. The rest of it is welded into these jig point mounts to hold it in place. And if you look at the back, there's the shackle mount. And you could see it's mounted up, everything's straight. There's a little gap there for the rear frame cross member is what's going to go there. And we got it all cleaned up, ready for the floor pan install. And here we are, we're going to cut out the rear seat floor pan. This is the first piece that's going to be replaced. The work on it, you can see has rust holes in it and just everything wasn't working right. Using an air hammer to just pop out the factory welds, they're not that good. And then the couple that are holding in strong, I'll just take the drill and the spot weld cutter and force it out. This process works pretty good. You just gotta be easy with the air hammer. You don't destroy the frame, or whatever you're trying to save. Sometimes I'll use this method, or I'll use a grinder if I really feel the metal underneath really weak. But this right here, the frame rail on this side was pretty strong. There's a couple spots that had to be fixed. This is one spot that had to be fixed. I'm doing the inner structure. This whole, you can see this whole thing was rotted out, the side piece, the inner structure. But the rest of this frame rail was pretty strong. So it's easier for me to just sit there and make a small patch and just weld up any holes and, fix that part versus, doing another frame rail. And I don't really like pulling parts off on the car if I don't have to. It just gets way too complicated. This is an easy patch, and I decided to TIG it in with the TIG welder. I just thought it would be a cleaner look, get good penetration, and I just like to TIG weld sometimes. The MIG welder would also work. The MIG welder didn't work on the inside just because I couldn't get the TIG rod as easy in there. So here we are finishing up this weld. And now it's time for the front floor pan install. It was the same process of cutting the rear pan out. My wife had to help me. It's a big panel by AMD. We kind of forcing it in place here or there. It fits really good, but just some spots the car is really old, and the panels, who knows where the stampings come from, that just needs a little bit of help. But for the most part, fit in pretty good. The only thing different about this floor pan, it doesn't have the tabs on the edges that come up where you would spot weld. So what we're going to do, we're going to braze the edges of this floor pan in after I tack weld them. I just think that's going to be a cleaner look. I'm going to try to braze and replace the seam sealer instead. You'll see that process in a little bit. But yeah, just making sure this lines up to the firewall. And we're tacking it down on that cross member where the torsion bars go in the front. I drilled some 3/16 holes and just throwing some heat on it and just tapping them down, make sure I don't have a gap in there and everything sits flush. And my wife is sitting there trying to push down as hard as she can, just kind of making sure we get that arch just right. So this is the process, just tapping, welding, tapping, welding. And here I am TIG welding. Actually, I'm brazing. I'm not TIG welding. The brazing process just melts a filler rod. It's a silicone bronze rod, and what I'm doing with it, I'm filling it in the gap just to make this gap watertight. It's got this plug welds on the front where the engine side would be of the firewall, and then this is where you would put seam sealer. I don't think this is really, it's kind of a tedious process. I mean, I think it's, you know, I have a little bit of free reign with this car to do what I want. It's really custom, it's really trick, and I really like it. I'm trying to perfect the art in it. So this is a perfect area to practice and really, you know, just get a good extra strong seal on it. Same thing with over here. You could weld this whole seam up. It's tacked in place, and the brazing rod gives a strong, as a joint like that, it's going to give a strong enough weld where everything else is holding it in, that it's this basically glue. And then when I grind it down, it just looks really slick. It's easy to grind, it's soft. I'm using a number 8 cup. I'm on AC actually, I found out. The first one was done with DC welding, but after doing some more research, a couple people said try it on AC. There's not a lot of info about this, and I really like the AC better. It seems like it cleans the spot before you penetrate it with the rod. You could see it really uses a lot of filler rod. You just kind of melting and feeding rod. I mean, it's sped up a whole bunch, but you're just feeding rod, feeding rod, feeding rod, versus, you know, TIG welding, you're mostly just running a bead. Here we are installing the toe pans, clamping on the edge. What I'm really focused on is getting them drilled in and held onto the rear frame rails, that front section that rolls down. It really has to match that curve. The rest of this area, you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room on it. So we're holding them in place, and you see my wife's gonna go ahead and stand on the center of the pan in a second and do the same that we did up front, kind of force the pan down in certain areas where, and I'm gonna sit there and work on the center of the pan and work my way toward the outside of the pan and then back on the inside. I'll do that again on the other side. Here we are putting the 4-speed hump in the car. What I did, I painted the edge instead of tracing it. I was just being lazy. I just threw some scrap paper, spray paint on it, and the yellow, I kind of tried to get the inside. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to get where my plug welds are, because I want to trim this pan up as close as I can to the edge and make this floor install almost seamless. It's not gonna be, but where the edges match up perfectly. I just think it's gonna be a cleaner look. I don't like parts overhanging, and that's what I did with the paint. I'll have to clean up this area anyway, so it just took an extra 10 minutes for that paint to dry. So I'm cutting it out, and you can see I'm gonna leave the center section of the floor pan because that's gonna cover the cross member that holds the torsion bars. I think that's how the factory did it, but one way or another, I don't want metal getting out there. I want that area to be protected. So that's how we're gonna do it. So now I'm taking the Eastwood strip and drum and just cleaning off the floor area before I drop the pans out and I get it hung up on edges. I just want that bare metal for that. We're gonna put the weld through primer on there, and then after that we have a good clean surface to work off of. I already started cleaning up the front gap with the silicone bronze rod and the brazing, just because I know I'm gonna be welding close to there. It might be harder to get in there after. You can see the other spot welds holding the floor pan are pretty much cleaned up. I just usually do one section at a time. This is how an automatic car would look right here with a couple different brackets. The 4-speed tunnel just puts this extra piece on because the shifter sticks out and it has a whole mechanism with the linkages. You just need more room. So that's what you're looking at right now. Finished cutting out the thing. Now that everything's stripped down to bare metal, you'll see the thing will drop, the pan will drop out. And now we're gonna come in, test fit the panel, make sure everything looks good on the bottom. I'll double check everything. And here we are. I had to cut out that corner a little bit more. I just didn't like the way it overhangs. So I did that, and I'm clamping. Again, the panel fits really good. This AMD sheet metal I'm a fan of. It just, you got to push it down in the corners and everything. So same thing, that's what that clamp's doing. We're hammering down and kind of, you know, every spot weld I take, making sure it's level, hammering from the top, and then some of these I'll hammer from the bottom if I feel the floor pan's, you know, falling down a little bit and doesn't have support underneath. And we just work our way right around, just drilling out or welding out those 3/16 holes. I got the clamps and the calicos holding the top of the panel in. I also, when I'm all said and done with this would be, you know, they would take seam sealer. I'm also going to braze this corner. You know, the welds will hold it good and the brazing metal will just seal it up really at the end. And I think that's going to look really slick. So here we are pushing the corner down. The screwdriver always helps me, kind of pinpoints where you got to go. And you can see it moving a little bit here or there, just massaging it from the top and the bottom. Just make sure everything's seamless and just fits really tight and snug. And I know I'm putting a lot more spot welds everywhere I've done this video. I use a lot more spot welds than the factory would. I'm not a purist on that part of the restoration. You don't really see them, and I just think it's going to be a lot stronger. So that's just how I do it. I guess it's overkill. Kind of sucks if I ever have to remove it, but I kind of try and build these cars for the long term, where hopefully this car will, you know, outlast by the time I'm still doing this. And you can see right here I'm using the clamp to force it down again, make sure I got a good tight fit. Doing the last couple of welds, and so here we have the whole back of the car stripped down, the frame cross member. I cut the trunk floor out, it wasn't doing anything. I got my weld through primer on the frame rails, making sure they don't rust. So we're gonna put this cross member in place. You can see there's square tubing in the middle. It's kind of just jigged up. That's gonna, I mean, this thing just fit in place. I couldn't move it. I mean, this is where it went. Left, right, everything's good. Quick, simple job. Ready for the trunk next. All right, out here in the garage this morning, starting out the day, we're gonna go ahead and mock up and install and tack into place these subframe connectors we got for this Barracuda. It's obviously not stock, not really worried about it, rather stiffen the chassis up and everything else with the torque box connectors to the front frame area. And then today we're going to install to the actual subframe connectors from the front to rear. We'll put some, we got to do some more test fitting and get them a little bit closer. And what we'll have to do is put some weld through primer on there. What I'm going to probably do is just tack it every inch on the car when it's on there. And then when the car goes on the rotisserie, I'll go ahead and TIG weld them up. But the tacks every inch will actually just hold it where the car won't move and it won't flex or anything, and they'll be where they're going to be. I got this one underneath mocked up. You can see it goes from the back frame area all the way to the front where the torsion bars come in, cross member. I don't know if you could see in there, but we got some marker lines. Those are the spots that are getting stuck on. I want to close that gap a little better. I mean, it's a really good fit for what it is, but I think I could get a little better. And then the welding and prep work, the prep time, if I spend a little bit more time, the final product's just going to come out that much better. So we'll go ahead and do that now, and when I get them tacked in, we'll maybe see if we get it in our video. All right, we'll try to go over a quick recap of the whole floor. There's the silicone bronze rod, all cleaned up. I really like the way it looks in the metal, where it kind of sucks we got to paint it, but all the seams are welded up everywhere in this floor pan. What I'll probably do is put some glazing putty on it when it's all said and done, right before the 2K primer, after the epoxy primer. We'll just fill in any kind of little crack or anything that's in there, and just make it that much cleaner. So everything fits good. The 4-speed's in there. I got the seat brackets in, some of the other support brackets. I got the cross brackets back in. And I got the rear of the console welded in there. Now the one thing about the silicone brass, you can't bronze you can't weld over. It's hard to see there, but when I TIG that up, I had to stop right before that spot. The only other bracket I got to put in, this bracket is for the front of the 4-speed console. I don't have the 4-speed console with me now, so I'll get the 4-speed console. We'll just kind of mark it where it's got to go. Make sure we're not off on that. But there's the top. Looks pretty good, front to rear. Everything's solid. We'll go around to the front. Let me show you actually the bottom of the 4-speed tunnel. Come out pretty good. I'll braze all that in there, but the fitment really good. It just needs to be cleaned up. I'm gonna wait till I get this car on the rotisserie to clean it up. It's just climbing under is a pain in the butt. There's the side, the driver's side. The brazing in that, front to rear. And brackets, same thing. In the back, I'm about to do the trunk. I'm just waiting for the parts. It's probably 2 weeks away. So the trunk's prepped. Just gonna wait till I get the trunk here. I got the cross piece in there, so everything should drop in with the trunk. That should be a fairly easy install, all things considered. Looking underneath, there's the torque box I welded in. It's gonna give support, and then the subframe connectors. Here's the, you can see where they're welded in there. I gotta clean up the welds. It's hard to weld one-handed, you know, holding yourself up, you know, get a real good weld. So I'll finish cleaning them up when we're on the rotisserie, but there's good penetration. You can see through the other side. They're strong. It's not going anywhere. Just, like I said, needs a little bit of cleaned up. The rest of the floor pans underneath, you can see all the spot welds got pretty good penetration. You can see this is from the brazing, but see, that's not even through. It's just you can see where it kind of just hurt the paint a little bit. Obviously this whole car is going to be taken down anyway before we epoxy it. There's some more of the bottom of floor pan install, or 4-speed install, and there's the other torque box right there. And I also installed these front torque boxes on both sides. So yeah, the car's strong. Should be good to go. We had a lot of support in this car, and I'm pretty excited. We made good progress. We'll start working our way to the front cowl panel and then these door areas. So stay tuned. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. A lot of it was cut out, a lot of cleaning up, but thank you for watching if you made it this far, and maybe you learned something. I got the flooring primer, and we're going to move on to the next thing. So if you like our stuff, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and like our Facebook page, Carthage Classic Cars. Thanks again, and stay tuned for more.